It started like most Saturdays, too quiet, too long. The kind of morning where the sunlight feels lazy and even the city forgets to hurry. I went to the corner cafe because my apartment felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe it was just that I'd been avoiding checking my phone. No messages, no reason to. The cafe was half empty. A few students were buried in laptops, someone reading poetry out loud to no one in particular. I ordered coffee, black, and sat near the window. That's when I saw her. She was sitting 2 tables across, a woman I'd only seen from afar. My neighbor's mom. The one who sometimes watered her balcony plants at sunset, hair tied loosely, like she was remembering how to be unbothered. She was wearing a light gray sweater, sleeves pulled over her hands. Her coffee sat untouched, the steam fading. She wasn't looking at anything, just out. The way people look when they're somewhere else entirely. I told myself not to stare, but my eyes kept drifting back. When the waiter brought her a refill, she smiled, small, polite, almost practiced. Then she unfolded a napkin and began folding it again, carefully, edge to edge, like it needed to be perfect. I didn't know what that meant, but I couldn't look away. A few minutes later, she looked up, directly at me. It wasn't long, barely a second, but there was something in her eyes that made my chest tighten, like she'd seen something familiar in a stranger, and it startled her. I looked down, pretending to check my phone, though the screen was black. When I looked up again, she was gone. That night, I saw her again, on her balcony, under the warm light of a single bulb. She was holding a glass of water, looking out at the city, her sweater replaced by a long shirt that caught the wind. I almost said something. Hi, maybe. Or, you were at the cafe today, right? But my voice stayed locked in my throat. Instead, I leaned against the railing of my own balcony, pretending to be interested in the streetlights. She noticed. Her eyes met mine, softer this time, as if she was expecting me to say something. I didn't. She smiled faintly, then turned her gaze back to the skyline. That small smile stayed with me longer than it should have. The next few mornings, I saw her again, always around the same time. Sometimes she waved, sometimes she didn't. I started timing my coffee breaks to match hers, pretending it was coincidence. Once, she caught me looking and said, "You're up early for someone your age." I laughed. Couldn't sleep. "Too much on your mind?" she asked, her tone half teasing, half genuine. "Maybe," I said. "You?" She didn't answer right away. She just looked down at her cup, then back up, a small crease forming between her brows. "Maybe," she echoed. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, just fragile, like it could turn into something if either of us moved too fast. That night, I sat on my couch, phone in hand. I typed out her name, or at least what I thought it was, more than once. Deleted it every time. The balcony light stayed on across the way, and I caught myself waiting for her shadow to move. It didn't. At midnight, just as I decided to put my phone away, a message buzzed. "Can't sleep either?" No name. Just that. And somehow, I already knew who it was. Her text came at midnight. "Can't sleep either?" I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, lit it again, typed no, deleted it, typed same, deleted that too. Then I just wrote, "Guess we're both bad at it." A few dots blinked, then stopped. No reply. Still, the next morning, she was on the balcony again, hair damp, robe tied loosely, a mug in her hand. When she saw me, her lips curved into that small, almost private smile. "Morning," she said. "Morning," I echoed. She hesitated, then lifted her mug slightly. "Coffee?" I smiled. "Always." There was a pause, then she said, "Come over." I made too much. Her apartment smelled like old books and lemon tea, the kind of place that feels lived in, not decorated. She poured me a cup, hands steady, eyes careful. "Don't tell my son I let you in," she said, half laughing. I smiled. He's barely around anyway. That made her look up, a shadow of something crossing her face. Not sadness exactly, more like distance. "He used to be," she said quietly, "before he started calling me Elena instead of Mom." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Sometimes silence feels like the only language that fits. She caught herself then, straightened. "Sorry, that was too much for morning coffee." "No," I said quickly. "It's okay." And it was. The honesty in her voice felt rare. We talked about small things, books, neighbors, the noise from the upstairs apartment. At one point, she laughed, and I realized how young that sound still was. She caught me looking. What? She asked. Nothing. You just... I stopped, embarrassed. You seem different when you laugh. She looked at me for a second, then said softly, It's been a while since someone noticed. The words landed heavier than she meant them to. We sat on the balcony after that, 2 mugs cooling between us. The city moved quietly below, cars humming, wind slipping through the railings. She tucked her hair behind her ear and said, You know this is odd, right? What is? This, she said, motioning between us. You. Me. The age thing. I smiled faintly. I hadn't noticed. She gave a small, amused scoff. You did. Maybe, I admitted. We didn't say more. The quiet between us stretched, not uncomfortable, but charged. I noticed her hand resting near the edge of the table, fingers curled slightly. Without meaning to, mine moved closer, not touching, just near enough that I could feel her warmth through the air. She didn't pull away. When I finally stood to leave, she said, You know, you remind me of someone I used to know. He listened like you do. Was he important? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Enough that I stopped listening to myself for a while. There was nothing to say to that. At the door, she reached out, just a light touch on my sleeve. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Later that night, I kept replaying that moment. Her hand, her eyes, that quiet space between words. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It started raining on a Thursday. Not heavy, just enough to blur the streetlights and make everything slower. I saw her through the glass door, standing on her balcony, watching the rain fall between us. I opened my door before thinking and called out, You'll get soaked out there. She turned, smiled faintly. I liked the sound. Something in the way she said it, quiet, distant, pulled me in. Then I guess I do too, I said, stepping out. The air smelled like wet concrete and jasmine. She leaned against the railing, her hair damp, droplets on her eyelashes. You shouldn't be out here, she said softly. Neither should you. A pause, then a small laugh. You don't listen much, do you? I'm trying to, I said. You just don't say much. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp, then softer. Sometimes silence says enough. We stood there, listening to the rain hit the tin roof. My hand brushed the railing near hers. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the pulse in my fingertips. I wanted to tell her that she'd been in my head all week, that her voice lingered even when I tried to forget it. But I didn't. She glanced sideways, like she could hear the thought anyway. I shouldn't, she started, then stopped. You're just. I waited. Young, she finished. Does it bother you? Yes. She said it too quickly. Then quieter, no. I don't know. Before I could answer, a voice called from the hallway inside her apartment. Male, casual, too familiar. Mom? You home? Her eyes widened. The sound of keys dropping, a door closing. Her son. My friend. She looked at me, panic flickering behind her calm. You should go. I hesitated. Please, she said, softer this time. I stepped back, heart racing. She turned toward the door, tucking her hair behind her ear like nothing had happened. When her son appeared, she was already pouring tea, her voice even. Hey, you're early, she said. I slipped back into my apartment, door half shut, watching through the small gap. They talked about dinner, work, and normal things. But every few seconds, her eyes flicked toward my balcony. Quick glances, careful, like checking if the rain had stopped. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound from her apartment felt too close. Laughter, footsteps, the clink of a cup. I tried reading, music, anything. Then, a soft knock. 3 taps. Barely there. I froze and walked to the door. When I opened it, she stood there, hair still damp, sweater sleeves pulled over her hands. He's asleep, she whispered. Why? I started, but she cut me off. Don't say anything, she said. Just don't. For a long second, neither of us moved. The distance between us felt paper thin. Her hand lifted, almost touched my face, then stopped midair. She looked at me like she wanted to remember, then whispered, Good night, and left. The scent of rain lingered after she was gone. We hadn't spoken in days. Not since the rain. Not since the knock. Her balcony light stayed off at night. I kept waiting anyway, staring at that empty space like something might return if I just didn't blink. Then, one evening, I saw her leaving the building. Hair tied back, coat on, holding a book to her chest. Hey, I said before I could stop myself. She turned, surprised, maybe even relieved. I was going for a walk. Mind if I join? A pause. Then, softly, you already are. The park was half empty. Just wind through trees and a couple sitting on a bench, sharing fries. She walked slowly, hands in pockets. I matched her pace. You've been avoiding me, I said. I've been. Thinking. About what? She exhaled, eyes on the path. About how easy it is to forget what's right and wrong when someone listens the way you do. I didn't know what to do with that. Is that bad? It's dangerous. We sat on a bench near the pond. The sky had that strange color right before dusk, blue fading to ash. She stared at the water. You're friends with my son. Do you understand what that means? I do, I said, even though part of me didn't. Or didn't care. She shook her head. No, you don't. You still think people are puzzles you can fix if you care enough. Maybe, I said quietly. Or maybe I just don't want you to feel alone. Her eyes lifted, sharp, wet at the edges. Don't say that. I mean it. That's the problem. A man jogged past, music leaking from his headphones. She watched him go, then said, he asked about you, you know. Who? My son. My stomach dropped. What did you say? That you live next door? That's all. Did he? No, she cut in. He didn't suspect anything. Because there isn't anything. Right. The words hung between us, heavy. I wanted to tell her how I'd started measuring days by her silences. How every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her. But I just looked down, hands clenched. She reached out, fingers brushing my sleeve, a ghost of touch. You're shaking. Maybe I'm tired, I said. She almost smiled. You're not. A long pause. The kind where everything feels balanced on a breath. I keep thinking, she said finally, voice low. If this were another life, another version of me, I'd ask you to stay. I looked at her, really looked, and the world seemed smaller, quieter, crueler. So what's stopping you? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The streetlight flickered on behind us. The pond caught the glow, rippling gold. She stood first, pulling her coat tighter. Don't ask me that, she whispered. And then, a heartbeat's distance between us, she turned away. A week passed. No texts. No balcony light. No quiet footsteps in the hallway. It had been months. The kind of months that make you forget what day it is, but not who you're trying to forget. Winter came, then left quietly. And one evening, when the air was starting to warm again, I saw her, standing in front of her door, fumbling for her keys. She looked almost the same, maybe a little thinner, maybe just quieter. When she finally looked up, she saw me. Oh, she said, a small, surprised sound. Hi. Hi, I answered. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, tiredly. You disappeared. I thought you wanted that. I did, she said softly. I think. She invited me in like she used to, though the gesture felt heavier now, like she was carrying the memory of it. The kitchen smelled faintly of mint tea and something burnt. A single cup sat on the counter. She poured another without asking. I burned dinner, she said, shrugging. Still can't cook for one. I smiled. Some things don't change. She laughed, a short, fragile sound. Then silence again. The kind that feels like both people are waiting for the other to speak first. I saw your son, I said finally. He said you might be trying again with my ex, she finished, glancing at me. Yeah, that lasted about 3 dinners. Sorry. Don't be. It was more nostalgia than love. She leaned on the counter, tracing the rim of her cup. I thought maybe if I rebuilt something old, it would make the new things less frightening. And did it? Her eyes met mine. No. The clock ticked once, twice. Outside, wind brushed against the balcony doors. I kept thinking about that night, she said suddenly. The rain. What almost happened? My throat tightened. Me too. I was scared, she admitted. Of what people would think. Of what I'd think of myself. And now. She took a breath. Now I'm just tired of pretending it didn't mean anything. I stepped closer, slowly, like the air might break between us. It did. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the cup down. You shouldn't say that. But it's true. She looked up then, really looked. No distance, no hiding. I know, she whispered. We stood there, inches apart, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. Her eyes softened, but she didn't move closer. Neither did I. I don't think this can be what it almost was, she said quietly. But I don't want to keep pretending we don't care. I nodded. Maybe it doesn't need a name. She smiled, small, real. Maybe it doesn't. Her hand brushed mine, a slow, deliberate touch. Warm, brief, enough. When I left, she followed me to the door. "Good night," she said. "Good night," I echoed. And then, softer, almost lost in the sound of her breath, she said, "Okay." Just that. And somehow, it was everything. I told myself she was busy, that it didn't mean anything. But every excuse felt thinner than the last. The first time I saw her again, she was at the cafe, the same one where I'd seen her months ago. Only now she wasn't alone. A man sat across from her. Older, neat hair, crisp shirt. He touched her hand when he laughed. She didn't pull away. I stood by the counter, waiting for my coffee, pretending not to look. But when she glanced up, her eyes found mine instantly and froze. Just for a second. Then she looked back at him and smiled. That night, I didn't go to the balcony. The next morning, she slipped a note under my door. It was short. Just her handwriting. Neat, careful. "We should keep some distance. It's better that way." No signature. No explanation. I read it twice, then folded it and left it on the counter like it might rewrite itself if I waited long enough. Days blurred. I worked more, went out less, stopped checking the window before bed. But habit is a quiet addiction. You think you've moved on, and then one sound, one laugh, one voice drags you back. It happened when I saw her son. He stopped me by the mailboxes, friendly as ever. "Hey man, have you seen my mom lately?" My heart stumbled. "Not really. She's been weird," he said, frowning. "I started seeing my dad again, I think. I don't know what they're doing, but," he trailed off, shrugged. "Guess that's their thing." He didn't notice me go silent. Just waved and walked off. That evening, I stood at my door for a long time, her note still on the counter behind me. I thought about knocking, about asking her what any of it meant, but I didn't. Instead, I sat on the stairs between our apartments, listening to her muffled voice through the wall, laughing, then quiet, then nothing. When the hallway light flickered off, I finally got up and went back inside. A few days later, a package arrived for her by mistake. I carried it to her door. I could hear her moving inside. Footsteps, the clink of dishes. My hand hovered near the door. One knock. That's all it would take. But I didn't. I set the box down, turned away, and walked back down the hall. Behind me, her door opened just as I reached mine. She called my name once, soft, almost uncertain. I stopped, didn't turn. The silence stretched, waiting. Then the door closed. That night, my phone buzzed. One new message, unsent. Just her name on the screen, grayed out. And in that quiet, empty pause between what could have been and what never would, I realized. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It's strange how time softens things. The sharp edges fade first, the words you didn't say, the nights you stayed awake replaying them. What's left isn't pain, exactly. It's something quieter, something that stays. Months passed. Seasons turned without asking for permission. The building got a new coat of paint. Her son moved out, new job, new city. I saw her less, but the spaces she left behind stopped feeling like absence. They started to feel calm. Some mornings I still woke up before 8, almost out of habit. By 8:47, the kettle whistled, and I'd look out at her balcony, and she'd already be there. Gray sweater, hair tied loose, 2 mugs on the railing. 1 black coffee, 1 mint tea. No words, most days. Just small smiles across the space that used to hold so much uncertainty. Sometimes we'd meet downstairs on our way out. She heading to work, me heading anywhere but. "Morning," she'd say, steady now. "Morning," I'd answer. There was warmth there, not the burning kind, but the kind that stays even when the sun goes down. One Saturday, we ended up at the park again. Same bench by the pond, same slow breeze. She'd brought a book, I'd brought nothing. "I still can't read more than 3 pages without thinking of that day," she said, smiling faintly. "The day we pretended we didn't know what we were doing. The day we almost ruined everything," she corrected. Then softer, and somehow didn't. We sat in silence after that. Not out of awkwardness, just because there was nothing left that needed fixing. Back at the apartments, she paused at her door. "Dinner tomorrow?" she asked. I blinked. "You mean?" She smiled. "You bring the coffee. I'll burn something again." We both laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from surviving the same storm. And for a second, standing there under the dim hallway light, I realized how much lighter everything felt. Not perfect, not dramatic, just real. That night, I stood on my balcony again. She was there too, watering her plants, humming something quiet. Our eyes met once, brief, easy. No tension, no what-ifs, just recognition. She lifted her mug toward me. 8:47 tomorrow. I nodded. Wouldn't miss it. I leaned on the railing, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. I thought about the first time I saw her, alone on that same balcony, eyes carrying a story I didn't understand. Now I knew it. Not all of it, but enough. Some love doesn't need to be chased or confessed. It just needs to be allowed to stay, quietly, where it already lives. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love sto?